everybody. My name is Neha and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm here to summarize a new book, and the book's name is The Psychology of Money. It is written by Morgan Housel. When I read this book, I knew that I had to share all of this information with all you people out there. It is one of the best sellers, and I feel that this, in combination with Rich Dad and Poor Dad, it gives you a whole new perspective which you might not have looked at so far. I'll quickly read a little something from the back of this page because that's what I do when I go and pick up a book. That the author shares 19 short stories exploring the strange ways people think about money and teaches you how to make better sense of one of life's most important matters. Morgan starts this book by comparing the lives of two people. One of them is Ronald Reed. No big deal about his life. He's a janitor. He works at a gas station. He also sweeps floor. Leads a very simple life. At the age of 38, he buys a two-bedroom house wherein he lives for the rest of his life. At the age of 50, he gets widowed, and it is at the age of 92 that he dies. It is when he died that he makes some news headlines in the paper because he leaves a net worth of $8 million. Two of which he leaves it for his kids, stepkids, and $6 million he leaves for a local hospital and a library. How come a janitor could have a net worth value of $8 million? What he did was, from whatever little savings he could do from his income, he invested it in some blue chip stocks. And then he waited for it to compound and compound. And as a result, we're talking about the $8 million that was his net worth. Let's talk about another person, Richard Fuskin. Richard is everything that Ronald is not. He is a Harvard educated, Merrill Lynch executive. He has done his MBA. He even retires at 40 and becomes a philanthropist. He has achieved whatever he wanted to. He was also included in one of the lists of the most successful business people during that time. Now, mid 2000s, he borrows heavily for expanding his 18,000 square feet Greenwich, Connecticut mansion. Now, mind you, this house already has 11 bathrooms, 2 pools, 2 elevators, 7 garages, and also that costed him around $90,000 to maintain a month. Financial crisis of 2008 hits, he goes bankrupt. First, his beach house is foreclosed. Next is the turn of that mansion that we were speaking about. And finally, he also loses his house, and it was sold at a foreclosure auction at a value 75% less than its original value. Now, what do we learn from this? Is it that we should become more like Ronald and less like Richard? That's not a bad idea though. But the real lesson to be learned here is that such stories are unique to finance. Will you find this anywhere, that a janitor has outperformed a Harvard trained surgeon in performing a heart surgery? Will you ever find any other janitor like Ronald Reed who has outperformed the nuclear engineers? Has somebody like him made a higher or better skyscraper than the best architects of the world? No, it is only, as I said, unique to finance. Morgan started writing about this topic in around 2008, which was the dawn of the financial crisis. And to be able to write about it, he wanted to know more about it. And so he wanted to refer to people. But what he realized was that nobody had a clear answer to why whatever is happening. One person would give a very good explanation, another person would give an equally opposite convincing rebuttal. So everybody had different views of what was happening, what will happen next. You know, when a bridge collapses, engineers will come to an agreement as to why it fell, because a certain amount of force, if you put more than that on a certain area, it will tend to break. Physics is guided by laws, but finance is guided by behavior of the people. So how I behave in a particular situation might be completely different from how you behave in the same situation. And that is why he calls the study of finance and money more to do with soft skills rather than hard science. Chapter 1 talks about no one's crazy. This means that people with different backgrounds, different cultures, different values, from different regions, different economies, different income, different job markets, and different kind of luck. They all have their own unique experiences based on which they take their own decisions. We cannot call them crazy for having made any decision, right? Now, my personal experience with money could be 80% of how I think the world works, but it could be just 0.00001% of what is really happening in the world out there. Let's talk about a Taiwanese firm which had really poor working conditions. And this was covered in one of the articles of New York Times, which had a lot of responses. One of the responses was of a Chinese worker's nephew who said that his aunt used to work in one of the sweatshops, which had a lot of hard work, long working hours, very small wage, and very poor working conditions. However, his aunt used to work as a prostitute prior to that. For her, it was definitely an improvement. Now, you see how somebody's viewpoint can be changed because of the experiences that they've had. For his aunt, it would have been okay to be exploited by an evil boss rather than her body being exploited by several men for just a few pennies. All this means is that everybody, the people, they have their own reasons of why they took a certain decision. We can just not call them crazy for doing something. Another very important point to be kept in mind and to realize is that we are very new to this financial system. The statistics say that the Americans' bachelor degrees have gone up from 1 in 20 in 1994 to 1 in 4 in 2015. Something so drastic has happened so fast, and this explains the poor decisions that was made in terms of student loans. Dogs have been domesticated for the last 10,000 years, and still they retain some of the behaviors of their wild ancestors. We are so new in this financial system, like 20 to 50 years old. We ought to learn a lot. The next chapter, chapter 2, is about luck and risk, which the author calls they're like brothers moving in the opposite direction. Bill Gates went to one of the only schools that had a computer, the Lakeside School. Let's do a little bit of math here. At that point of time, there were around 303 million high school age people. Out of that, around 18 million were in the US. Out of that, around 270,000 were in the Washington area. And out of that, 100,000 were in Seattle. Out of that, only 300 people went to that Lakeside School which had a computer. Bill Gates was one of those 300 people, and that means that Bill Gates was one of those 1 million people who had this luck in his favor. He even admits in one of his documentaries that if there was no Lakeside, there would be no Microsoft. He had another batchmate, Kent Evans. He was also in the same school. He was as visionary as Bill Gates, as hardworking as Bill Gates, and as smart and intelligent as him. They used to work on several projects together on the computer. But Evans died in a mountaineering accident. Now, the odds of one being killed in a mountain accident in high school are also 1 in a million. So both had the same force, same magnitude, but one had luck, but one had risk. Let's talk about Mark Zuckerberg. He was considered a genius for having rejected Yahoo's offer to buy his company. Yahoo was considered fool to have rejected the offer of Microsoft to buy their company. What is the lesson that entrepreneurs can learn from here? Nothing clearly, right? But the two things that should be kept in mind, one is that be careful of who you praise and admire, and also be careful of who you look down upon or wish that I don't want to become like that, because not 100% of the outcomes can be attributed to efforts and decisions. Luck and risk matter a lot in people's lives. Chapter 3 says never enough. You've seen people who know no limit to what is enough for them. The hardest financial skill ever is to get your goalpost to stop moving. You achieve something and your expectations increase equally. The amount of contentment you get, not much, isn't it? So until you achieve your final goal, you have to keep your happiness in results minus expectations. The second big problem is social comparison. For example, a rookie baseball player who earns $500,000 a year, isn't he rich? He is by definitions, right? But when he compares himself with Mike Trout, who has just received a 12-month contract of $430 million, which makes him earn around $36 million a year, he finds himself very poor. When Mike Trout compares himself with one of the top 10 hedge fund managers who earns $303 million a year, he finds himself poor. When that fund manager compares himself with one of the top 5 hedge fund managers who earn $700 million, he finds himself poor. And when he compares himself with Warren Buffett, whose net worth is more than $3 billion, he finds himself poor. And then Warren Buffett further looks at Jeff Bezos, whose net worth is $24 billion. Basically, there is virtually no ceiling of social comparison, and that is why it's not worth it. Another important point is enough does not mean too little. It doesn't mean being conservative. So, those of you who say, oh, do you mean we should not live our life to the fullest? That's not what we mean. But enough might not mean too little. Another very important thing is some things are not worth risking. Your reputation is invaluable. Your family is invaluable. Your friends are invaluable. The love that you receive from your dear ones, that is all invaluable. And there is no risk in the world worth taking if it comes to putting any of these things at stake. The next chapter is confounding compounding. Here, the author talks about the most powerful tool of earning enough that we spoke about in the last chapter. So, he explains with the example of an Ice Age story. He explains that if something compounds, even a little force can result into tremendous results, so extraordinary that they seem to defy logic. You will underestimate the possible things that there are, where growth comes from, what it can lead to. So, it is with money. He talks about Warren Buffett, who has a net worth of $84.5 billion. Out of this 84.5, $84.2 billion came after his 50th birthday. So yes, he is a So yes, Warren Buffett is a phenomenal investor, right? The key is that he has been a phenomenal investor for the 3/4 of a century. There are 2,000 of books about Warren Buffett that are written. The most important book should be titled as This Guy Has Been Investing Continuously and Consistently for 3/4 of a century. Read this chapter, it is an amazing one. It's like an eye opener. There are several books on economic cycles, interest rates evaluation, finance, and this and that. The only book on finance and money on this topic should be Shut Up and Wait, because that's how compounding works. The next chapter talks about getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. Here he says that good investing is not necessarily about making good decisions. It is more about consistently not screwing up. We'll talk about this in our next segment. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying my video. I'll again say that if you get a chance, do pick up this book and start reading. Summarizing this book through a video is nowhere close to reading it yourself. But still, for all you people out there who are struggling to find time to pick this book up and read it, do wait for my next segment to complete this book. Bye!